What's going on, y'all? Oh goodness, all this cold weather in my eyes, man, it's making my eyes all messy. Listen, I got some stuff that I've been holding back too, and I don't know how this is gonna come out, but you know what? I'm gonna just go ahead and start it. Let me tell you some of the things that go through my mind when people try to say, Matt, so real. You don't know that you're an Israelite yet. You're fighting your heritage and all this other stuff. Let me show you the stuff that goes to my head. First off, you're asking Christians. You know, I really want y'all to get the understanding on this. What you guys are asking Christians to do is to drop what they believe and become a Hebrew. Some of you guys may say, hey, it's not all that different. There are some similarities. I'm not talking about the similarities. I'm talking about the differences. When you say, hey, Matt, you need to go ahead and become a Hebrew, or you need to accept or reclaim your lost heritage and all this stuff, I ask myself, what am I reclaiming? You're asking me to become a Hebrew. I'm asking you, what makes you a Hebrew? I ask y'all that all the time. Do you realize that just this morning, I had 3 of my videos that were on that topic flagged because they couldn't answer the stuff? 3 of them. My question is, what makes you a Hebrew? The reason why I ask that question is because every time I look in the Bible, I see what makes you a Hebrew, Israelite, whatever. And even then, the Hebrews existed before the Israelites because of, obviously, you know, Jacob didn't exist yet. The same thing that made you a Hebrew is the same thing that made you an Israelite. Why is that? Because of Genesis 17. You guys end up saying, well, DNA and being born a Hebrew makes you a Hebrew. That's exactly what you push. The Bible doesn't say that. I've walked through 10 to 12 scriptures to show you guys that. Genesis 17 shows what makes you an Israelite. If you are circumcised on the 8th day, or hey, if you're just circumcised, you know, because you're some Gentile or whatever, that's what makes you an Israelite. That's what makes you a Hebrew. That's what makes you a Jew. And don't even try to say, well, you know what, Matt, you need to use those phrases in their proper context. No, I don't, because in the New Testament, you have Jesus and especially the apostles who use that phrase interchangeably. So if you got a problem with me doing it, have a problem with that in the Bible. Oh, but that's right. You guys don't read the Bible. Y'all don't study the Bible. Y'all study proof texts and precepts. They said, if you circumcise somebody that is bought of the stranger, which is not of thy seed, then he shall be a part of the people. But if for whatever reason he's not circumcised, he shall be cut off from his people. How do you get race out of that? If someone can become a Hebrew by circumcision, how do you get that? If you don't think it's a big deal, what about Genesis 34, where Simeon and his brothers end up tricking somebody into becoming an Israelite, or Hebrew, whatever you want to call it, just to kill the man while he was sore. Sore from what? Circumcision. He said, listen, you circumcise yourself and you will become as we are. We will become one people. Where did he get that idea from Genesis 34? He got it from Genesis 17, when God made a covenant with Abraham. I know what you're thinking. Well, Matt, you know what? I still don't think it's a big deal. Okay, how do you explain Exodus chapter 4? When God chased Moses to kill him because he didn't circumcise his son. Can you explain that to me? So now we went from Genesis to Exodus. What about Exodus 12? When Gentiles wanted to come close to keep the Passover, what did he say? You know what? Circumcise yourselves and then come near and keep it. And that person will be as one born in the land. I know what you're thinking. Well, Matt, Look at what it says. It says, as one born in the land. Obviously, the people who are born in the land were born Jews. Doesn't it sound like that you can be born a Jew? Nope. Look at it. What happened to that baby who was born? What happened to that baby on the 8th day, according to Genesis 17? Ah, that's right. He was circumcised. Go ahead to Philippians chapter 3. You'll see Paul do the same thing. He'll say, yes, I was born of the stock of Benjamin and all this other stuff. Then he will say circumcised on the 8th day. He knows what he's talking about. There it is. You can't refute that. That's Bible. Then all of a sudden it says that person that was circumcised, who was Gentile, he will be as one born in the land. In other words, he will be a Jew, Hebrew, Israelite, whatever you want to call it. There's even more. Go to Judith 14, since you guys like the Apocrypha. Go to Judith 14. Just a second. Go to Judith 14, verses 5 and then verses 10. He literally talks about how, he hated the Jews and things like that. He hated Israel. And all of a sudden, he started to see that the God of Israel was who he says he was. Then after that, it says he was circumcised and he became a part of the house of Israel. What do you do with that? And the list goes on and on and on. And I can go to Ezekiel chapter 47, and all of a sudden, when you look in the Greek Septuagint, it says that they were proselyted among the proselytes. So now the original Hebrews are being called proselytes. Look up what a proselyte is. It means someone who's converted to a religion. How in the world can you be converted to a religion if you're born in it? Oh, it must have happened with something that happened to you on the 8th day. The same thing that happened to somebody who was 25 years old and wanted to become circumcised. Same thing. Same thing. And that was from the Greek Septuagint version, which was in 200 BC. And 99.9% of the time, that's what Jesus and the apostles quoted anyway, because that was their Bible. It all lines up. It all makes sense. You're asking me, think about this. They often say, they often say this, all right, Matt, we know that we're Hebrews. Okay, so how do you know that you're a Hebrew? They go to Deuteronomy 28 and they say, we're under the curses. Okay, well, there's a problem with that. Are you under the new covenant? Okay, then you're no longer under the curses. Ironically, and I say this, yes, it's actually ironic that the book of Hebrews, they actually show that. Have you read Hebrews chapter 9, verses 15 through 17? Where it actually says that, Jesus is a mediator of the new covenant who redeems us from the transgressions committed under the first covenant. That includes making sure that, you have no judgments coming against you. If you're actually redeemed from the transgressions committed under the first covenant, which were sins, that means you're also redeemed from the consequences of those sins, which would be judgments. Which would be, i.e., curses, according to verse 46 in Deuteronomy 28. If you don't keep all these commands of the first covenant, then all these curses will come upon you. Oh, but you are redeemed from the transgressions committed under the first covenant. Would you like an example of that? What about the woman caught in adultery? She committed a sin under the first covenant, right? And the people were about to stone her. But what did Jesus do? He said, you know what? He who was without sin, cast the first stone. The Redeemer of the New Testament covered her from the transgressions committed under the first covenant. There's your example. Where do you think the writer of Hebrews got that idea from? He got it from Jesus. Same thing. What you're asking for Christians to do, you're basically saying, you know what? We want you to become a Hebrew, even though, you'll still, you're under these curses, and that's why, you need to be under Christ and things like that. But if you're saying that blacks are still cursed or something like that, then what you're saying is that Christ's blood is not powerful enough to redeem you from the curses of the law. It's not powerful enough. Oh yeah, you're still saved, but you're cursed. Look at my YouTube channel. Type in Mac Thomas. I ask him about this stuff. Can you be saved and cursed? This is what they're getting you to think. And you're asking Christians to accept that? We're not going to do that. You're saying that, we know that we're Hebrews because of what happened in Deuteronomy 28:68. Okay, for one, have you read verse 63? I think God is very clear about what he's saying. Have you read verse 63? He said, listen, if you don't do right, just as I rejoice in bringing you into the land, I will rejoice over you as I bring you out of the land that you go to possess. What was the land that they went to possess? The promised land. Oh, so God is going to rejoice in verse 63 out of bringing them out of the land that they go to possess. Well, where are they going to go? Verse 68 tells you where they're going to go. You're going to go to Egypt in ships. The question is, where were they dragged from, from where they were at? Where were the Africans taken from? Were the Africans taken from the land that they go to possess, or were they taken from Ghana, Angola, West Africa, Mali, Songhai? Was that the land that the Jews went to go possess? No. So they're taking off of the land. Where? Of Africa. Africa is not the promised land. Africa is not the place that they go to possess. And then after that, it literally says, I will put you on ships and you're going to go to Egypt. That happened 3 times. That happened during the Greek captivity. I showed you that in my videos. Please go to my videos. I do strict, strong research. I'm a sourceman. I stay up till nearly 4 in the morning to put those presentations together, because one day I definitely will be speaking in other places, just trying to update the church. That is really my mission, and that's the reason why I really want to be with Eric Mason and wherever his team goes. I don't mind at all. I have 7 years worth of PowerPoints. But anyway, back to my case. They literally went to Egypt. They went to a place called Skedia. Look up Skedia, and it's in Maccabees, the 3rd Maccabees, where they were taken from Jerusalem to Skedia, Egypt. And the generals made war games out of them. Then after that, you had 70 AD. That's the 2nd time it was done. Then after that, you had the Bar Kokhba Wars of 135 AD. That was the 3rd time it was done. Have you read, what's his name, the Roman historian, Cassius Dio? Have you read his stuff? He nearly has over 80 volumes of Roman and Greek history, specifically Roman history, and he speaks about it. It's not just Josephus. You got Munter. You got Hegesippus. They speak about this stuff. It happened 3 times from the land. And you mean to tell me that God ended up waiting 15 or 1700 years to punish a people in a covenant that he don't even use anymore? We're in a new covenant. He is working with the sacrifice of Christ, his son. That's the covenant that God is working with now. And you mean to tell me he put that on pause to go ahead and take a African people out of a land that was not Israel, even though in verse 63 he said he's going to take you from Israel and put you into Egypt. And then after that, he's going to put them in ships and take them to America, even though verse 68 says he's going to take them from the promised land and put them into Egypt. Africa is not the promised land. Egypt is not America. If you really want to know what Egypt really is, look at Revelation chapter 11, verse 6 and verse 8, where it said that, you know what? It was that great city that is spiritually called Egypt and Sodom, where our Lord was crucified. Where was our Lord crucified? He was crucified in Jerusalem. Outside the city, I believe. I'm not sure. But yet, John is calling that place spiritual Egypt and Sodom. That's your spiritual Egypt. It's not America. It was Jerusalem, who was called that great city. You continue to read the book of Revelation, it'll continue to tell you also what that great city is called as well. It's called Babylon. What do you do with that? That's what John is saying about Jerusalem. And you want us to get caught up in the, oh, we're going to get the land back. Let me tell you what that sounds like to a Christian, okay? You're excited about getting Jerusalem back. Every time I look into the New Testament, I don't see that. I see them getting excited about the Jerusalem above. That one. Not the one that's right now where it says in Galatians chapter 4 where the Jerusalem at present day is in bondage with her children. Not that one. That's what we see. But yet you're saying that we're going to get the land back. I'm not going to give up the new heavens and the new earth and the Jerusalem to come for a land that's the size of New Jersey. I'm not going to do that. I'm not getting excited about that. That's what it sounds like to a Christian. It said, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Which one? The new earth that's going to come. Not this perishable one. You talk about getting the land back, so excited. Have you read Acts chapter 4 and Acts chapter 5? Where you had the first Christians from Jerusalem giving up their land, selling their land. Oh. And they sold all that they had, and they said that they were in favor with all the people around them. And nobody had lack. Everyone just gave. That sounds a lot like what Jesus taught. What did he say? You know what? You give up everything to follow me. Well, sounds like that's what they did. So why aren't the children of Israel who became Christians in the book of Acts acting like you? Why don't they get excited about the things you get excited about? You're saying, well, you know what? We still know who we are because, once again, just the curses. Okay. How do you know the difference between a Christian who's being persecuted, as Christ said, and a person that's putting themselves under the old covenant and being cursed? How do you know the difference between them? Have you read what Jesus said for following him? He said, listen, it's for the new covenant. He said, look, if you follow me, you will have persecution. Bless those who curse you. All of a sudden, you have Peter and Paul. Read their epistles. I remember one time I was on Cherry Love's channel. I went through 16 verses that talk about how Christians will be persecuted but not crushed. And all this other stuff. 16 verses, and there were a lot more. How Christians will be persecuted and they'll be hated of all men for Christ's sake. Not for Israel's sake, for Christ's sake. How can you take that person who you see suffering and say, oh, they must be an Israelite because of hardness of what they're going through? Nah, fam. Look at what happened to those slaves. They were Christians. They prayed to the Holy Spirit. They clung to Jesus. And it was because of that they were cursed. Right? Jesus said, bless those who curse you. That was the context. They were going through everything that they went through because of Jesus. And you look at them and you say, oh, well, look, they match these curses in Deuteronomy 28. How can you tell the difference? They weren't under the old covenant of Moses. They were following Christ. Deuteronomy 28 says, if you do all my commandments, hey, you're going to have the best life now. Literally. If you don't obey me, then all these curses are going to come on you. Jesus don't say that. Jesus says, if you follow me, your life is still going to be hard, but I want you to bless those who curse you. And by the way, pray for those who despitefully use you, okay? The old covenant sounds like a better deal. It does. But who's worth more? Who's worth more? Exactly. So that's what it sounds like when you are these zealous quote-unquote Hebrews try to come on and say, you know what, you guys are denying your heritage. That's what it sounds like to a Christian. You want us to give all that up and accept all that, and just, even though that don't make no lick of sense at all, it makes mincemeat of the New Testament and, mainly the Old Testament too. That's what it sounds like. Literally. Ask us all the time, well, why are you denying your heritage? Why are you? Well, that's why. And when we ask you these things, y'all don't know what to say. Well, man, I still believe that you are an Israelite by birth. I still believe it. Okay, once again, find me somewhere in the Old or New Testament that defines being an Israelite like that. The closest that I found was in the Old Testament in Nehemiah and Ezra. Nehemiah and Ezra. And guess who they were talking about? The Levites. The Levite priesthood. That's who they were talking about. The Levite priesthood. If you were not written down in a registry, a record book, look up the Hebrew word for registry. If you did not have that, then you could not be a part of the priesthood. That's what it said. The Levites had to be like that. What about everyone else? Well, Genesis 17, covenant of Abraham, circumcision. There it is. What do you do with Esther 8:17, where it says, and many of the enemies of the Jews became Jews for fear of the Jews? Then the Septuagint makes it even worse. It says many of the enemies of the Jews were circumcised and became Jews for fear of the Jews. Once again, I keep finding my biblical argument in the Bible. Every time I look for the birth argument, I don't find it. But you want Christians to believe that, you are born an Israelite. Even though the Bible doesn't say it, but it says the circumcision argument 12 times. Why do you think Acts 15 was such a big deal when it says certain men from Israel who believed, and they were Pharisees, ended up saying, well, you know what, unless you're circumcised and you keep the laws of Moses, you can't be saved. In other words, long story short, if you don't become a Jew, you can't follow Jesus and be a Christian and be saved. That's what they were saying. That's why it was such a big deal. But when you proof text things to death, you don't put those things together. I mean, it's just nuts. Then all of a sudden you have the origin stuff, right? Origins. Think about it. Bob Evans in the 1960s and 70s and all that. He does a little bit of things and he dies. And then all of a sudden, I don't know what I'm doing. I just hit a button. Someone hit an invite, so I don't know. Anyway, so like I was saying, all of a sudden you start to see these strange doctrines come out of the ISUPK in the 1960s and 70s, right? There was a guy that was a part of the original Seven Heads. His name is Lahab. You should look up his interview. He said he hightailed it out of there. Why did he hightail it out of there? Because he said that they were beginning to use the Talmud. Have you read the Talmud of what it says about Gentiles? I think you should. I think you should Google it. It says that Gentiles, now get this, here comes my bus. It says that Gentiles will be slaves in the kingdom to come. That's where they got it. It says that for every one Jew, there will be 2,800 Gentile slaves. That's what it says. Excuse me. Um, anyway, my face will be closer to the camera so that way I can be heard. That's where that comes from. That's why when you go on my YouTube channel right now, and I've held this up back for quite some time, because I never got around to making PowerPoints out of it. So I just did it in the raw. That's why if you go to my channel right now, ssoreal, and you see my latest videos, it shows people, ultra-Orthodox Jews, saying this stuff. And then all of a sudden they start to sound exactly like the people from One West. Why is that? Put it together. Lahab sees that they're using the Talmud. The Talmud says all this stuff that the ISUPK is saying to this very day. And so he hightailed it out of there left. That's why you see ultra-Orthodox Jews and other, extremist Jews saying this about Gentiles. They say, you know what? You could lie to a Gentile. You can do all this stuff. This is what the Talmud says. Put it together. This is the reason why in the 90s, you had the ISUPK selling drugs to whites. I had that as an interview from someone who was in the Bronx, who was a part of the ISUPK for a while, and he left. And that's what they do. And they justify it not only just the Talmud, but they also use scriptures in the Old Testament that say, hey, if you see a dead animal carcass on the road, you are not allowed to eat it, but you could go ahead and sell it to a Gentile. That's the kind of scriptures that they use to justify how they treat whites, how they treat Gentiles. Put it together. Wake up. Later on in a few hours, I'm going to go ahead and post some things I was eventually going to make a PowerPoint out of, but I'm going to give it to y'all in the raw. I ended up looking at a book called British Israel Bible Notes, and the whole notion of, Jews are just really lost Gentiles. Gentiles are really just lost Jews. They don't know who they, and that came literally from British Israelism. That was started in the 1590s, the 1640s, and it went on to this day. So I'm going to show you from that book that was created in 1903, and it speaks about this stuff. In other words, this is where all these Black Hebrew Israelites got their breakdowns from. This is where they got it. If you have British Israel people writing all this stuff since 1590, and they're rich with all these books, why would the Black Hebrew Israelites of the 1960s not just go over there, take all their books, take all their stuff, and just make it black? Like, why? Just put it together. Put it together. Wake up. I'm not saying anything new. (1903). You can download that book right now as a PDF and read through it, and you tell me what they sound like. Look at the Christian identity movement. It was started in the 1930s by a guy who broke off from British Israelism. He got the whole notion of the two seed doctrine of, you have Jacob and then you have, Cain. He got that from a 9th century Jewish mystic commentary on the book of Genesis. Look this stuff up. And as much as the KKK were fighting black people, don't you think there was some theological intermixing going on as well, since, they got this whole theological doctrine of the same thing as the Black Hebrew Israelites, and they came before the Black Hebrew Israelites? And the British Israelism, that came way before any of this stuff.
It's even more crazy. They have Nordic Israelism now. They trace that stuff back in the 1750s when people were thinking that. You have all kinds. But when you're asking a Christian, oh, you need to become a Hebrew, well, these are all the issues that we see. You know, well, Christian was, it's a pagan term. It's in the Bible 3 times. 3 times. I had somebody who ended up saying to me, well, I don't believe that the Greek was the original manuscript. I think it was Yehukanan, Brother DeMonte Paulson. Had an off-air talk with him on the phone. Ended up saying, well, when Peter wrote that, it wasn't in Greek, it was in Hebrew, and we lost that manuscript. And I don't think he used that word. Long story short, he couldn't justify that to save his life. I asked him very basic questions, couldn't do nothing about it. So anyway, listen, I'm definitely going to be at that conference. I would love to get with y'all. Pastor Eric Mason, I would love to get with you guys. I would love to show you what I have. I would love to learn a lot more. I would love to teach. I would love to be with you guys. I would love to help y'all. I would love to roll with y'all. I have a series going on right now at my church. Yes, only 3 people showed up because it was the first time, but nevertheless, I'm going to continue to push it. And it is about what you're talking about. So listen, I could say more, but that's all I had to say. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And that's my rant. I have a lot of other things that I wanted to talk about, but right now my mind's full, and that's it. So I'm out.